Hello everyone, welcome to the current affairs series of Drishti IAS. I am Ritu and today's session is about miscellaneous. So, moving towards the first news. The first news is World Economic Situation and Prospect Report 2024. And who releases this report? So, this report is released by United Nations and the title is World Economic Situation and Prospect Report for the year 2024. And what is the key findings of this particular report? So the key findings of this particular report is that there is a significant decline in global inflation in the year 2024, but there was a simultaneously warnings also given that in the lower middle income countries the inflation may be rise and you have to be cautious when it comes to the inflation. And the report forecasts decline in global gross domestic product growth from an estimated 2.7% to 2023 to 2.4% 2024. So this is the decline, which is a very marginal one. And developing economies in particular are struggling to recover from the damage caused by the pandemic. It is also estimated that many low income and vulnerable nations will experience only moderate growth in the coming years. And what are the reasons for these kind of the low decline, and what we can see that why they'll have a moderate growth? Because there is a persistently high interest rates, increasing geopolitical conflicts, less international trade, and increase in climate related disasters. So these are the basic factors. Because of this we can see the global inflation is rising in middle income countries, especially in developing countries. Coming to the next one. The next one is about what are the prospect of South Asia. So South Asia is projected to grow by 5.3 in 2023 and 5.2 in 2024, and India's growth rate is estimated to 6.2 in 2024. So this is a very positive one. In comparison to South Asia, India's growth rate has been estimated nicely. And global inflation, which has been a major concern over the past 2 years, is showing signs of subsiding. And what about the global headline inflation? So it is projected to decline from 8.1% in 2022 to an estimated 5.7% in 2023 and then 3.9% in 2024. So this is the series of the decline. Coming to the next one. So the next slide is about Global Economic Outlook Report, World Bank. So it is released by World Bank. And what are the findings? So according to this, global economy may be affected by the end of the year 2024, and which may improve to be the half decade with the slowest growth of gross domestic product. It means that in last 3 decades it has proved that there will be the slowest growth rate. And what are the reasons for the slowest growth rate? Because of the conflicts which is happening in Russia and Ukraine, conflicts happening in Middle Eastern countries, conflicts happening in between India and China, also in Asian countries. So the conflict is another reason. The second reason is the pandemic, because in last 3 decades the any world has not seen such kind of catastrophic events, and also the natural disasters, also the climatic change, because day by day it's rising. Due to the strengthening the US economy, there is a hope that there will be the recovering and recession, but you have to be also cautious, and the tension, when the geopolitical tensions will be rise, there may be chances that it will rise, the economic disparity will be rise day by day. Then coming to the Pradhan Mantri Anusuchit Jati Abhyuday Yojana. As the name suggests, this particular scheme is dedicated to the scheduled caste of the country, scheduled caste communities. And what are the aim for this particular Pradhan Mantri Anusuchit Jati Abhyuday Yojana? To develop skill and also income generations and various initiatives regarding their poverty, regarding their literacy. So these schemes will work onto these things. And this is the 3 cumulative schemes. And what are the 3 other schemes? So the first one is Pradhan Mantri Adarsh Gram Yojana. The second one is Special Central Assistant to Scheduled Caste Sub Plans, and the third one is Babu Jagjeevan Ram Hostel Scheme. So with merging of 3 schemes, this Pradhan Mantri Anusuchit Jati Abhyuday Yojana, so that there will be the holistic development of scheduled caste communities. What are the objective? The first objective is to reduce the poverty among the scheduled caste because of the caste dynamics. They are more marginal. So the first thing is to reduce the poverty and to find out different ways for the income generation. And the second thing is to improve the literacy rate because of the caste dynamics, because of the lots of class and caste differentiation. Scheduled caste communities still lacks a literacy rate, and their literacy rates are not promising in nature. So the government of India had decided that there will be the improvement in literacy rate of the scheduled caste communities, and they have also provided various institution, various fee waiver programs, also reservation in the institution so that they can study carefully and effectively. Coming to the special provisions, provision for operation of viable income generation, economic development, and up to 15% of the total grant exclusively for the scheduled caste women, because women among the scheduled caste are the victim of both things. The first is the caste discrimination, and also second thing is the gender discrimination. So because of that, the special assistance has been provided to the scheduled caste women, and the second one is up to 30% of the total grant will be used for infrastructure development and at least 10% of the total fund for the skill development. So along with the infrastructure development, there will be also development of skills, literacy, poverty, so that there will be the overall development of scheduled caste communities of this country. Coming to the next one. Next one is about Global Risk Report 2024. And who releases Global Risk Report? So it is released by World Economic Forum. And what are the highlights of this report? So this has been released over the backdrop of rapid technological change, economic uncertainty, and the warning planet and the conflict. So because of this thing, they have analyzed the global risk report, and they have the survey is based on the 1500 experts, industry leaders, and policymakers. What are the highlights? The highlights is that various global events including deadly conflicts, extreme weather condition, and social unrest. Because of this thing, the risk has been rising day by day, and misinformation, disinformation plays an important role when it comes to the social conflict, when it comes to the country's conflict. And you can see recently that there was a misinformation on the social media that Biharis, the people from the Biharas beaten in the Tamil Nadu. And after that, what we have seen that people have started migrating from the Tamil Nadu. So these kind of misinformation create social unrest and also enmity between different states. So I have given just an example. These kind of examples are present all over the world. And the four structural forces are required for shaping the world. The first thing is that climate change, demographic divide, technological acceleration, and geostrategic shift. So we need to work on to all these challenges in order to reduce the risk, and also the cost of living crisis, economic risk, inflation. These are the long-term changes which are required to reduce the risk, and it is very disproportionate for the middle income countries, low income countries, because for them the situation become worse. Coming to the next one. Next one is about annual status of education report 2023. So when it comes to report, you must know that who releases the report, what is the edition, what is the theme. So these are the basic things you must care about. So first we will know that this is the 18th annual status of education report. And what is the title of this time? So the theme is Beyond Basics. And who releases this report? So it has been released by NGO Pratham. And this is the largest citizen-led household survey of the world. And what it aims for, it aims to understand the enrollment, the admission, the education, the literacy among the children, especially in the rural areas. And ASER is conducted every year since 2005 in all rural districts. And this is the largest citizen-led survey in India. And their focus is that enrollments are happening, but what we are learning from all those enrollments, whether students are studying or not. So the age group they have covered is from 3 to 16 for the basic reading, and for 5 to 16 at the national and state and the district level. So what are the findings of this particular report? So the highlights is that overall 86.8% of 14 to 18-year-olds are enrolled in some educational institution, which is a very good sign. However, there are notable differences between these age group. 3.9% of 14-year-olds and 32.6% of 18-year-olds are not enrolled. So when it comes to that, what this shows that after 14 years children started leaving their education. So this is also a very alarming situation. When it comes to the humanities, commerce and science background, most of the students have opted the humanities and arts, and the majority of the students from age between 14 to 18 have opted the humanities stream. In the 11th grade, the number is 55.7% studying this particular stream. And there is also a gender gap with fewer women in STEM, which is the science, technology, engineering and mathematics. 28.1% are females and 36.3% are the male. And only 5.6% are taking the vocational course, which are professional in nature. You can get immediately job after these kind of vocational jobs. So what are the findings of this particular report? Says that we have to focus on the students, that why they are living their studies after 14, whether it's poverty, whether it's caste based discrimination, whether it's lack of awareness, whether it's lack of opportunity. And also we have to focus on the education of women, especially women in STEM. We have to also focus on the training of vocational courses. So these are the findings of the ASER. Coming to the next one. Next one is IDET Commission report. And National Human Rights Commission stressed the importance of implementing the recommendation of IDET Commission. And first you need to know about that IDET Commission is for whom. So it is for the denotified, nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes. And they are called as NT, SNT and DNT in India. And NHRC has urged the government to repeal the Habitual Offenders Act 1952 or appoint a representative from the denotified tribe community with nodal offices mandated under the act, because they are still marginalized, they lack awareness. The government is also unrealistic and sometimes they are not taken care of. So this is the right time and this is the high time we must take care of the denotified tribes and notified tribes. And what are the major recommendation of the IDET Commission? The first recommendation is that first we need to know that when it was established. So it was established in 2014 under the leadership of Bhiku Ramji IDET, and its main focus is to compile a statewide list of denotified nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes. So they are called as DNT. And then coming to the highlights. So highlight is that its aim is to identify people excluded from the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes and other backwards. So generally they are categorized under SC, ST and OBC, and the recommendations are SC, ST, OBC list should be assigned to the OBC category. If any person is not marked under the SC, ST, OBC, then that person and that particular group can be assigned to the, or what you can say, OBC category, which is the other backward classes. And to enhance the statutory and constitutional safeguard by the including third schedule in the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, which is the Prevention of Atrocities Act. So this should be applied to them also. And permanent commission with legal status of DNT, SNT and NT should be constituted. Just like for women we have Women Commission, for OBC we have NCBC, for ST we have NCST, and for SC we have NCSC. So for that we also need such kind of commission for the DNT and NT and ST. So this is their recommendation. Coming to the next one. Next one is that who are the Vimukt and nomadic and semi-nomadic tribes. So they are known as Vimukt Jati because in British period they are categorized under the Criminal Tribes Act 1871. And the British also assume them as a habitual offender and they are born as a criminal. But this particular thing has been abolished in 1952 and they were officially denotified by the government of India in the year 1952 and they are considered as Vimukt Jati. And what we have seen that a thorough survey has been done, and what that survey told us, that these communities are very much marginalized, even marginalized up to some, what you can say, SC, ST and OBC categories, and there is no special commissions, there is no special initiatives for these communities. So it's high time that Government of India must come with the special provisions. Coming to the next one. Next one is about startup ranking of state 2022. So this is the era of startup where you can see that in every streets, in everything, people wants to do startup with their foods, with their different kind of ideas. So in this particular ranking, the all the states and union territories are ranked, and this is for the first time that large amount of states and union territories had participated in this particular thing, and this is an initiative by the Government of India, so that there should be the strong startup ecosystem in the country, and opportunity should be provided to the what you can say aspirants who wants to pursue startup, who wants to do anything related to their ideas or their business. And this exercise play an important role in making the business environment easier for the startups in the country, because if your government is promoting, then your work becomes very easy. Then what are the classification we have? So we have few classification, 5 classification. The first one is best performer state, top performer, leader, aspiring leader, emerging startup ecosystem. And in category 1 there are 2 categories. Best performer states is Gujarat, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu. Top performer Maharashtra, Odisha, Punjab, Rajasthan. Leader Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand. And then we come to the another one, which is aspiring leader. In aspiring leader, Bihar, Haryana, and emerging startup ecosystem, Chhattisgarh, Delhi and Jammu and Kashmir. This is a very shocking thing that Delhi is into the emerging startup ecosystem. Then we come to the category B, which is the best performer, Himachal Pradesh. Top performer, Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya. These are the small states. And then we come to the leader one, which is Goa, Manipur and Tripura. And aspiring leader, Andaman and Nicobar, Nagaland. And emerging startup, Chandigarh, Dadar and Nagar Haveli, Daman and Diu and Ladakh, Mizoram and Puducherry. So here Chandigarh name is also very much shocking, because they have developed a lot, and why startup in Delhi and Chandigarh is not up to the mark. The Government of India must look into this. Then coming to the next one. Next one is about multi-dimensional poverty index, Niti Aayog. So it has been released by Niti Aayog, and this is very much important for your examination, because question has been already asked to this area. So as I have already told you that this has been released by Niti Aayog, and you already know that what is Niti Aayog and what is the highlight of this particular multidimensional poverty index. The highlight is that 24.82 crore people have lifted out of multidimensional poverty in the last 9 years. So in the last 9 years, around 25 crore people have been lifted out of the poverty. And the discussion paper uses a national family health survey and conducted in the 2005, 6, 2015, 16, 2019, 21. So this is not an annual or biennial phenomena. Whenever it's conducted, they have taken data from this thing. And national multidimensional poverty simultaneously measures deprivation across 3 equally weighted dimensions of health, education and living standard that are represented by 12 sustainable development goals aligned indicators. So they take care on 3 things. The first thing is health, second is education, third is standard of living. So they are also very cautious and accessible about the nutrition, child and adolescents mortality, maternal health, years of schooling, school attendance, cooking, fuel, sanitation, because these are the dimension to look and to assess any household that whether they are living below poverty line or above poverty. So this is the thing. Coming to the what is it's based on? So it is based on the robust Alkire and Foster methodology, which identify people as poor based on universally accepted matrix. So this is based on the universally accepted matrix designed to assess extreme poverty, and they has 12 indicators. And what are the key features about this report? There has been a significant reduction in multidimensional poverty in India from 29.17 to 11.28% in the year 2023. So in last 10 decades, what we have seen that 17.89 reduction have been done in terms of the poverty. And then This positive change is attributed to various initiatives of the government, and the largest decline in numbers we can see in the states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan. These are the states where we can see that highest number of poverty people living below the poverty line. But there is a positive news coming out of these states that there is a large number of reduction people who are living below the poverty line into these states: Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan. Then coming to the next one, Madhika language. So many times there is a discussion that we need to save our language, and many languages have disappeared and they are on the extinct because people and government is not taking care of, and so much young generation is not enthusiastic about their traditional language, and Madhika language is one of them. So Chakaliya group in remote colony of Konkan near Kaliveri, Kerala faces the imminent loss of their language Madhika, and only 2 individuals left who are very fluent with this Madhika language. And they also fear that because of their death and after their death, who will proceed these kind of language? It means that language will disappear. And the neglect of Madhika language is attributed to the social hatred, because Chakaliya group is considered as such untouchable group, and they are part of ex untouchable group, and because of that we have seen that this particular language is disappearing because they are not associated with the mainstream. And Madhika language has no script, and it is a mixture of Telugu, Tulu, Kannada and Malayalam. And despite being familiar to Kannada, it confuses listener due to its various linguistic influences, because they are mixture of different languages, so it confuses very much influences. And then due to lack of documentation and no scripts, and also people who are not fluent with Madhika language, this language has almost disappeared and always on the verge of extinct. And we will know about the Chakaliya community. So Chakaliya is a ex untouchable community who are residing and who worship Thiruvenkantaram and Mariamma, and they are basically the nomadic. And earlier they were categorized under scheduled tribe, but right now they are categorized under scheduled caste group in Kerala. So this is about the Chakaliya community. Coming to the next one, Pradhan Mantri Suryodaya Yojana. So the Indian Prime Minister launched the Pradhan Mantri Suryodaya Yojana as an innovative government initiative which aims to install power system or rooftop solar panels on the rooftop of 1 crore homes in the country. So what you have to do that here there will be the solar panel on your rooftop of your home, on the terrace, and there will be the cost of reduction in electricity because there are different means, and now the solar panel and solar electricity are different means to use electricity. So this is very renewable in nature also, natural also, and it will be also cost effective. And if you are enough for your consumption, it's enough, you can also transfer to the other people and for the government use also, and for that you will be paid also. So this is not just for the cost effective, it will also provide employment, it will also provide money, and it will also provide economic facilities to the household. So this is a very good initiative for the environment, for the ecosystem, for the economy also, for the upliftment of the people also. So this is about that. Then we come to the Corruption Perception Index. Corruption Perception Index has been released by Transparency International, and according to this, most countries made little or no progress in addressing the public corruption, and India is also among them. And it scores 180 countries and territories around the world, and here the parameter is 0 is highly corrupt and 100 is corruption free. And according to this report, almost 2/3 of the countries who had scored less than what you can say 50, and the global average score is just 43, which is a very worrisome, because not just India, almost entire world is corrupt. And Denmark has topped this particular index for the 6th consecutive time, followed by the Finland and New Zealand. And when it comes to the worst performance, Somalia, Venezuela, Syria, South Sudan are in the bottom because of the conflict, because of the inattention paid by the what you can say world communities, also by their governments. And They are also so much into the armed conflict. So these are the regions that we can see the highest number of corruption in their countries. Coming to the India, so India rank has been slipped, and from what you can say that it has become 93rd, and their score is just 39, and earlier their what you can say their rank is 85th. So from 85th it has become 93. So the corruption has also rose in the country. Coming to the next one. Next one is about Mera Gaon Meri Dharohar program. The government of India has decided to map and document all the villages under Mera Gaon Meri Dharohar program. And what is the basic idea about Mera Gaon Meri Dharohar program? Because each villages have different kind of culture, different kind of heritage, history, social life. So the government of India has decided that there will be the mapping of all the villages, and they will also document about all the villages, because many times many villages are off the map and people don't know anything about that village, the speciality of the village, the heritage of that village, the social structure of that village. So it's very important to strengthen the villages of this country, because India is a country where most of its population, around 80% of its population, lives in the countryside. So it's very important to have a special care of the villages, so that villages will also have idea about that whatever they are doing, whatever the anything innovative they are doing, it's the government is noticing that, and if there will be any structural problem, if there will be any assistant problem, the government of India is ready to assist themselves also. So this is also for the cultural thing, and it will not enhance the just cultural mapping, it will also enhance the socio-political scenario of a particular villages, and also there will be the intermixing, there will be the more awareness about strengthening their village life to have standard of more living in the villages. So this is about Mera Gaon Meri Dharohar program. Then what are the different categories under this particular scheme? So this is arts and craft villages. So according to their speciality, they will be categorized under this. Ecologically oriented village, scholastic village linked to the textual and classical tradition of India, epic villages associated with the Ramayana, Mahabharata and mythology and oral epics, historic village associated with the local and national history, architectural heritage village, any other feature that needs to be highlighted such as fishing village, gardening village, shepherd village. So these are the criteria under which every village will be categorized, that okay, if you have a better knowledge about science, then they will be categorized under the scientific village. If any village have a better knowledge about Ramayana, Mahabharata, they have this kind of cultural tradition, then they will be categorized under the Ramayana, Mahabharata category. So it depends. If any village is very much active about the horticulture, so it will be categorized under to that category. So this is about the arts and craft and every categories. Coming to the next one, Nazul land. So recently in Haldwani, a violence broke out, and experts have also termed it as a communal violence. And why there was a violence on Nazul land? So first we need to understand that what is a Nazul land. So earlier what happened, that this is a state land, in a what you can say, in a literal sense you can say that it is a state land, but it is not owned by the state. So there must be individuals, there must be community who own this state and who take care of this state. And what happened, that generally the government gives these kind of state to a particular community for the opening of the schools, for the opening of the hospitals, and many times we have also seen that so many construction building is happening and government provide these building on lease. So this is the basic idea about the Nazul land. And why there was a violence in Haldwani, because they people have alleged that there is an encroachment of mosque by the Muslim community, and because this is a Nazul land, so this is a state owned land, and the particular community has no right over it. So earlier also what we have seen, that Nazul land was also part of British India, and in that also this particular thing is owned by the British, but it is taken care by the princely state. But after independence, the princely state lacks documentation. So these kind of lands has been taken over by the government, and they have given to certain community for their upliftment, for any religious purpose, for any educational purpose, for any hospitality purpose. So in real sense it is owned by the government, but it is provided on the lease. So this is about the Nazul land. In examination they will be asked question related to the Nazul land. So that's it for today's session. I hope you like this session. If you have any queries related to this session, kindly ask in the comment section. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.